Kaalaman, knowledge, ancestral and contemporary, is at the core of the mission and vision of the Museo ng Kaalamang Katutubo or MusKKat. In its ethically framed acquisition activities, MusKKat diligently acquires not only objects but also retrieves the accompanying cultural data as a vital part of its ongoing task of research into kaalaman, the results of which we share with everyone curious and interested in cultural objects and notions, historical studies, in processes of fracture, and accompanying stories and sundry information. One of the ways we share is through MusKKat's Cultural Brunch, a podcast entitled Usapin, Usapan. It is a venue for an informed and informative conversation between MusKKat, represented by yours truly, Alvina, and one subject matter expert. This Usapin Usapan is a conversation about the Filipinization of Chinese food with Carmeleah Ang See. Maya is an educator who mentors in De La Salle University, Taft, Manila. She sits on the board of Kaisa, whose museum, Bahay Chinoy, she headed. Maya is also a gardener, providing leafy Chinese and Filipino vegetables to healthy foodies. This endeavor also helps sustain farmers in Caliraya, Laguna. With me for the asking chores is Marissa Macuja, erstwhile restaurateur, now a hotelier, whose tasks include selecting the food service provider for their hotel. I would like to ask or prompt the listeners, think, have you ever gone to a party without pancit? Isn't the lumpiang Shanghai part of the repertory of a party? But are these really Chinese food or invento ba sila ng mga Pinoy? So, Maya's here to explain when did Chinese food come in and when did the Filipino own it and Filipinize it, but still claim that they're eating Chinese food. Please, Maya.
Hi, thank you for having me, Cora. Food is always a fun topic. I always love talking about it. And your question is very, very common, right? Is where did pancit come from? So if we're talking of history, the first time that we see illustrations from the Spanish period of Chinese migrant vendors selling food would be around the time of the tobacco monopoly of the 1700s. So you have factory workers going into factory, making cigarettes, making tobacco and all that, wrapping for export, correct? But the Chinese were not part of the factory people. So they were outside. They need to make money also. So what do? They sell food. They sell food to the factory workers. So when you think about it, the Chinese food that started here in the Philippines is really for the very pobre factory worker. No, yung pinakamura kasi mahirap lang yung bibili. No, hindi siya extensive laureate, right? So it's really poor man's fare. And the illustrations that we see are often noodles. So may mga mangkok, tapos may makikita kang noodles. Right? May toppings, may pakonti-konting ganun. Mostly ganun yung mga illustrations na makikita natin from the Spanish period. And that could probably be the origins of noodle dishes here in the Philippines. If you go to China, the more popular noodle dishes will be soups. No? So in our version here in the Philippines, yung mami. Right? Dito, it became popular already during the American period. Okay. Another soupy dish that's popular here is the miswa, right? The miswa soup. But our miswa here, yung puti na mabilis madurog, 'di ba? In southern China, the miswa there is one very, 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 very long strip na hindi siya napuputol. No, so it's usually handmade, the miswa there, and that's what we in southern China, it's the same miswa that we use that's called cha miswa.
Miswa is rice noodle?
Yes, made of rice. So it's rice noodle, chamiswa, and that's the dry kind. No? And in southern China, yun yung kinakain namin for birthdays, for weddings, for celebrations, yung chamiswa.
What is in it?
The same, almost the same as what we have here. So, any meat that you have or any vegetable that you have, halo mo siya, and then gisa-gisa, usually may peanuts, and then may spring onion, yun yung miswa.
But still in the soup.
We have soup and dry, right? So, maraming conjecture about how the miswa or how the pancit evolved here. No, the most common theory is that pancit kasi is easy to make. Meaning, you can use any ingredient that you have available. So if you're poor, your only ingredient would probably be what? Repolyo, potato, toge. Or repolyo, carrots, and maybe a few pieces of chicken. And you can make miswa already. Or you can make pancit already. And just a bit of soy sauce, okay ka na. Or kung may pera ka, marami kang sahog. Pwede kang maglagay ng kahit anong sahog. And then over time, dito sa Pilipinas, that's how it evolved.
But my question nga is, meron bang pansit canton sa Canton?
Wala. So, that's one of the questions, no? May pansit canton ba sa Canton, China? Canton is now Guangdong. May lumpiang Shanghai ba in Shanghai, China? No, there is not. Because over the centuries, these two food items evolved the Philippine way. No, tayo na yung nag-invento ng ingredients.
But what was the original? Were the two food items brought in by the Chinese migrants, whatever they were here, either carpenters or workmen in the Parian? What did they bring in that the Filipino adopted or developed to become the pancit canton and the lumpiang Shanghai as we know it?
So the Chinese migrants would most likely have brought the most simple and cheapest versions. Because remember, the migrants who came here were very poor. They come here because we used to be the greener pasture. So in China, they leave their villages in China because there is famine, drought, civil war, or all of the above. No, so they come here to work and send all their money back to China. So what they would have here for celebrations, let's say the pancit, will be the cheapest variation available. And that will be just your noodles and probably soy sauce and maybe a little bit of gulay. Right? Because that would be your cheapest option. In the same manner, the lumpia would most likely be also the cheapest versions, which would be toge and potatoes as filling. Okay. So let's start with the pancit. So the cheapest version will be what the migrants would bring because pancit is a celebratory dish. Any noodle dish is for celebrations.
Celebration of what?
Any celebration. Birthday, New Year, and now even graduation, you get a promotion, we always eat pancit, right? So in the same manner, the Chinese would always celebrate with the noodle dish, especially birthdays.
It's also very filling.
Yes, it's also very filling. And then, over the centuries, the pancit evolved the Philippine way. I always use the pancit malabon as an example.
Okay.
Why is pancit malabon all seafood? Okay,
Well,
you try.
because it's Malabon is a fishing village.
Exactly. That's why Malabon all has seafood, right? And so the evolution of the pancit depends on where it is and what ingredients are available in that location. And most likely the palate of the community in that location.
Because pancit habhab is another thing. But there were a lot of Chinese, from what I understand, in Lukban.
in Tayabas.
In Tayabas,
I
yes.
think,
Either traders, no?
Yes.
But again, as you say, the simplest, because I think that is the most simple, the simplest pancit, the original pancit habhab, because it was nothing but the noodles and green papaya. That was all.
Yes.
Which you put suka of all things. You don't put patis. You don't put any. It's suka.
Right? So
that's the simplest.
that's the simplest, plus the palate of the community. What are they usually eating? Is it remember, Cora, in research on traditional indigenous Filipino food, what we're popular with is really suka,
Yes.
right? It's really all the souring agents. And that's the Philippine palate.
Yes, the Philippine note is not sweet.
Yeah,
it is
it's
sour
sour.
because of everything that's become sour. But paksiw.
Right? So even in Quezon, they have the pancit bato, which is the suka.
I'm not familiar with pancit bato. What is it?
It's pancit. It looks like pancit canton, the noodle, but it's cut up very small. And then you have a choice of putting soup or not, but it's usually suka. It's usually sour also. And it comes in a bowl.
Does it have condiments? Whole.
Not very much. Very little. You can choose toppings. Sometimes it's some karinderya will give you laman loob. Sometimes it's chicken. But that's it. It's very plain. I think I'm not sure actually, because so we have a friend from Quezon who will always cook for us when we come home. When she comes to us, she'll bring an entire bag of pancit and then make it at home. And then ours is usually sa bahay, it's just chicken. She'll just put chicken, no other things.
But the noodle that they use for the canton is made of what? Is that wheat?
No, that's egg noodles, I think, yeah.
So egg
But-
and flour.
Yeah, egg and flour. So again, the pancit, the evolution of pancit will depend on the location, availability of ingredients, and the palate of the community eating the pancit.
Mhm.
So in the same manner, lumpia evolved the same way. But lumpia is a little different in terms of origin. Okay, so lumpia in where we come from in southern China, very particularly in Xiamen, there is emeng lumpia. So the Xiamen lumpia. You can still buy that in Binondo now. The Xiamen lumpia is a celebratory dish.
Is that what we had here? If you remember, there was one Saturday or Sunday when they made lumpia.
I think so, yes. The elaborate one.
A lot of ingredients, and,
Yes, and then you wrap it yourself.
we had to wrap it ourselves, which we could not do.
Yes, that's it. So, it's a celebratory dish that we eat 15 days after the Lunar New Year. So it's basically the village celebrates the end of winter. Celebrates that, hey, we have food to eat. We planted something sprouting over there. We're looking forward to a good year ahead. No, so it's a celebratory dish. 2 weeks after the 15 days after the Lunar New Year. And this one is conjecture, but it's, I'm imagining a migrant. I'm imagining a migrant very, very far away from their families. So you have here in the Philippines, the migrants are all male because they're all working.
Okay.
Very patriarchal society. The women stay home with the children, right? And take care of the homes. And the men go out to work. No? And then so they're here, and that's 15 days after the Lunar New Year, and they're pining away for their families. Oh, my families are now eating lumpia at home. They're all involved in cooking. So children would be in charge of maybe tearing the chicken apart, shredding the chicken, maybe cutting, because there are rituals for the vegetables. Some vegetables you slice with knives, some vegetables you cut up with scissors, some chicken you just shred with your hands, and all the members of the community are involved because it's a celebration. Every household, every member of the house will have to be involved in the preparation of the ingredients, right? And so here you have a migrant maybe pining away. I'm so sad. I'm not part with my I'm apart from my family. I miss them so much. So I'll make lumpia. But then they're poor. They have no money for chicken. They have no money for elaborate ingredients. Peanuts are probably expensive. I don't know. But they'll get whatever they can, wrap it up in a rice wrapper, and that's their lumpia. Right? So, like pancit, it would have started here as a poor man's fare.
Question. When we had that lumpia event here, I think it was last year, no? The Filipinos were looking for sauce.
There's no sauce.
Yes, that's what we call it. That the sauce was invented ng Pinoy.
Yes, because we're a very saucy people.
Yeah.
Everything.
But
How was it eaten originally in Xiamen, as you would say?
In shaman, there's no sauce because the vegetables, there's one set of vegetables that's already pre-cooked. And that already has sauce.
Flavorings.
That already has flavor. And then, so when you put things together, you get the flavor from the vegetables and you don't put sauce. Right? And then there's cooked vegetables, which is savory. And then you have the seaweed.
yes,
The seaweed and the fried sotanghon, the hot tea, which is salty. And then you have sugar and peanuts. And so you mix all of that and that's your flavor. Not the sauce. Right? And then, so that's the original from China. And then it came here. Migrants probably could not afford all of those elaborate ingredients. So they would eat whatever's available. And then eventually, it evolved again. For us Filipinos, we have lumpiang ubod. And obviously, there would be no lumpiang ubod anywhere else in China because ubod is very tropical, right? And then, we started making lumpiang Shanghai. That one, I don't know the origins of on where and when it started. But I would imagine as people had more disposable income, then I can afford to buy meat. And meat is really expensive. And so I'd buy meat, mix it up, and then wrap it in lumpia. I don't know the origins of lumpiang Shanghai either. They're smaller because meat is expensive. Yeah.
I went to one of the gardens in Shanghai, Shanghai Garden, where they had the birds, etc. And there was a small restaurant that served what looked like lumpiang Shanghai, but what was inside was 3 types of mushroom. Because
That was really nice.
That was really nice. So I was thinking, maybe somebody thought of making the lumpia this small. It's small.
I think the size has to do with the ingredients. Yeah, because if it's expensive, you don't want to make a gigantic lumpia, right? But yeah, so that's how it evolved. Again, the evolution, the changes that happen with all of these food items depend on where it's being made and who's making it. No, especially, for example, like pancit. I have a feeling that every barrio here in the Philippines will boast of the best pancit maker. Right? We have you want pancit? Dun ka kay nanay, ganito. Right? Ganun lagi, diba? Every barangay you go to here in the Philippines, meron yan. Definitely.
But how about the other things that you see in the menu? Of course, you know that the panciterias, their menus up to the 1900s were in Spanish, no? But they were Chinese food, no? And Chinese-owned restaurants. But let's say pinsik frito or sweet and sour. I mean, are these traditional fare in China or just got added camaron dorado con hamon, for instance?
oh, that one is completely.
Yeah,
Chorizo
and
de
then
Macao.
hey, nice. And hototai is hototai because here when we go out, concerts and all that, our friend Marian Pastor Roses always says, what's nice at this time of night is hototai. But you can't find hototai just anywhere. I think in Baguio you could, in Rose Bowl, but here, what restaurant now serves hototai?
Right.
So what is that from China?
Not directly. Chances are these are so we're in the field of conjecture, but chances are these recipes were created by the Chinese who were here.
Okay.
So they would recall maybe a recipe from their grandmother, their grandparents in China, but then they don't have the same ingredients here. And so they would get substitute and try to approximate the taste. And then also have to make sure that this taste is sellable to Filipinos, or if it's the pansiteria, it's sellable to the mestizos and the Spanish elite. Because that's your paying customer, right? So, for example, what you mentioned earlier, the pinsek frito, the chorizo de Macau, all of that, those have Chinese origins. But then you slap on Spanish names, then now you can sell it to the Spanish elite and get higher prices, right? You can price them higher kasi Spanish.
It's like that hamon dorado.
Hamon dorado panahon.
I remember it because when we would go out, it's on a piece of toast, and then the camaron is there, and then it's wrapped in ham, and then it's fried.
That's most likely a Philippine invention already. Because, yeah, because there's, Chinese cuisine in China, we don't do bread. Right? We do the pao, which is rice-based.
It's a dough.
But it's rice-based.
How about mantao?
Isn't that still rice? The original, the mantou is still rice-based.
It's really from China. I mean, it's not an invention of all these Chinese restaurants owned by Filipinos.
No.
It's the same dough as siopaw.
Yes, it's the same dough, just different shapes.
And kwapao is...
Kwapao is the same dough.
It's a filled mantou.
Yeah, the kwapao kasi, the origin of the name, kwa means slice.
Slice.
Yes, and then pao is just bread. Right? Kwa is, so that's why kwapao is always cut in half. Kwa is the same term that they use if you're going surgery. So it's really, kwa means slice. Kwa literally means slice. So kwapao is sliced bread.
Since we're on the subject of kwapao, the one thing that interests me also is fermented vegetables. There are, when you eat congee, do you call it congee? I mean,
ambe.
And it's very plain, and then you have condiments, But there's the one condiment in kwapao which we like, which is the fermented mustard leaves. Is that also found in China?
Yes. The habit of congee did not really transfer very well here. Did not transfer exactly to the Philippines. Right? What we have here is the arroz caldo.
Yes.
Right? So it's a mixture of the Chinese congee and the Spanish palate of chicken.
Yeah.
Right? So it's a mix already. But I don't meet very many Filipinos who know the original, where you only eat plain lugaw.
It has no taste at all.
No taste. It doesn't even have salt, right? So yeah. But that's in China. That's the China congee. It's very plain. And then you put ulam.
How do you call it?
In Hokkien, it's called ambe.
Ambe.
Yeah.
But where did the word congee come from?
I think isn't that American already? Or European?
I don't know if American, because the Americans also contributed, diba, yung chow mein is also there. That's from California because of the Chinese who went there, no, for the gold rush. But is there here anyone family that still cooks traditional? I mean not Filipino restaurant, Chinese restaurant, but I mean
very traditional Chinese or maybe southern China, where we come from, Fujian cuisine. Very few. Some of them would be majority would be in Binondo.
Yes.
So very few restaurants now sell I guess quote unquote authentic, but it's not purely authentic because there are some ingredients and some tastes that have changed, right? You can't really make it exact. So the emang lumpia is still available in Binondo. There are restaurants that sell that. There's a stall, the Poheng. There's Poheng lumpia. They're the most popular ones, but they just sell lumpia. That's their only dish. And it's only takeout. So and it's huge. The what we ate here last year, the big fat ones, yeah. So it's huge. It's an entire meal by itself. And then the duck miswa is available in Chuanqi and Cafe Mezzanine. Yeah, and they cook it with sibut, the four herbs. So it's four herbs, and that's cooked for the duck miswa. So the herbal soup naman is very Hokkien also. It's very, very common to us. We eat it all the time when we're sick.
I thought when you were sick, you ate the black.
The black chicken. The black chicken is cooked in the herbs. So the ingredients, the herbal soup is just herbs you put in the water. And then the ingredients that you put in the soup will depend on whatever is available. Most commonly would be black chicken if you're recuperating from an illness, because the black chicken supposedly is full of nutrients to give you energy because you're recovering, you're recuperating. Yeah. So, so they do that. They still do that for the duck miswa. What else? There's oyster cake in Quick Snack. It's an oyster omelette.
Is that also traditional?
Yes, it's traditional Hokkien food. But here in the Philippines, we eat it with ketchup.
There, how did you eat it?
You just eat it plain. You don't put sauce on it. Yeah. Yeah. So there are those.
How about that famous radish cake? Again, the question about radish cake.
Dim sum is mostly Cantonese. Dim sum is mostly Cantonese, and the theory is that it came mostly from the Hong Kong side.
Because the migrants were from Xiamen, mostly.
To the
No.
Philippines.
Sorry. Yeah, from the Philippines. In the Philippines, most of the migrants are from Fujian.
Yeah.
So, we are unique in Southeast Asia. The Chinese population in the Philippines is unique in Southeast Asia because we're very homogeneous. So Fujian is a province, and in the province is divided into counties. One of the counties is called Xinjiang County. And majority of us come from that one county, which is very weird because if you go to other countries in Southeast Asia, the Chinese in their areas come from all over China. So majority of us come from one county.
And you speak Hokkien.
And we speak Hokkien. Hokkien is the language in southern China, the Min language, Minnan. So our Hokkien here has also evolved very differently from the Hokkien of China, the Hokkien of Singapore, the Hokkien of Malaysia, because we're very isolated. Because we're very isolated here in the Philippines. And then, remember, during the American period, there was a Chinese exclusion law. And so migration virtually stopped. It was very, very difficult to come here. And so the way our language evolved was very internal. It did not get much outside influence. It did not get much input from China or from other countries. Very, very internal development. If I'm correct, a lot of terms that we still use in Hokkien here are no longer in use in other countries. Yeah, because we're very, because the development kind of stagnated here.
I think it's the same comment from the Spanish speakers. The Spanish that we speak here is 1950s, they say, because there's no evolution among the Spanish-speaking Filipinos. No, I think even among the Spanish.
Less people speaking Spanish now.
And then that too.
And then the people who study Spanish are mostly the historians who need to study the archaic Spanish.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
Anyway, the other question, since you brought in language, really has to do with the language. I wanted to ask, how come the Chinese restaurants retained the Spanish nomenclature even after the Spaniards went? It was during the American period.
Well, it's popular.
Okay.
Became popular. So if you want to sell more, familiarity. Yeah.
Rather than changing it and people asking,
What's this? What's this? What's this? Oo.
But the other thing is also, of course, rice came from China. I mean, there was the debate whether it's India, China, the Yangtze Basin, etc. But there's now fried rice. There is yang chow, and there is the other one which I like very much.
Yampang.
Yampang, yes.
Are these really from there, or again Filipinized? The way is it the same way as it is in China? Because as you know, the paella in Spain is different from the one here.
Right. Okay. So in terms of origins of rice, very specifically rice, they've already proven that because they found the Hamutu civilization of 7,000 years ago that already had rice. Right? So so there were shards in the excavation in the site, in the Hamutu site. They excavated shards of pottery. And when they remade the pottery, it looks so much like our pottery here and the rest of Southeast Asia. You know how we make the palayok, right? I mean, Southeast Asian palayok are all look similar. And it's still very, very similar to the original palayok in Hamutu, including the kalan. Diba the kalan is usually like number 8 shape,
Yeah, it's like that.
like number 8 shape. So it's the same. When they reconstructed the Hamutu shards, it pretty much looks like the palayok sets that we have here in Southeast Asia of today, right? And so in terms of rice civilization, they've already proven that because the Hamutu predates all the other rice civilizations in Asia, right? That's one. Now, in terms of recipes, there are slight differences. Because Kiampeng did not become restaurant fare.
It's malagkit.
Yes. But we don't use malagkit rice.
Mm.
Binababad yung rice. Ibababad mo siya bago mo siya isaing. Kaya siya malagkit. The recipes kasi, it did not become restaurant fare until the 80s.
Rather late.
It's late, 70s, 80s with the very, very Binondo restaurant. Because Kiampeng is home food. It's just cooked at home. And so it didn't really, and nobody, I mean, in terms of customers, why will I eat that in the restaurant? I make that at home. Right? So in terms of customers, if you're talking of the Chinoys in Binondo, we're not gonna buy that. Right? So it didn't really become restaurant fare until late.
But it's really hard to find.
Up to now, because it's also hard to make. So we make it, it's made on special occasions. There are lazy versions, I make the lazy version, just pop everything in the rice cooker and that's it. That's your lazy version. But the original versions, it takes an entire day to cook.
Like how?
Because you have to prepare the onions, you have to toast them, you have to fry them, then set that aside. And then, some people use dried oysters, some people use dried scallops. You have to prepare that. You cook that ahead of time as well. And then, the ingredients of the kiampeng, whatever you're putting in there, are cooked ahead of time before they're mixed into the rice. Right? And then the rice, the main sauce of the rice is soy sauce, and instead of regular sinaing with water, you put soy sauce. Right? That's what makes it salty, and then other ingredients, other spices to get that taste. And then you mix in the others and then continue the cooking. So it's an elaborate process. Much like the lumpia. It's an elaborate process, and that's why very few people sell it.
Because I like kiampong.
Yeah, it's very good.
Yeah, a cousin buys it. And since we have mentioned names, where I was able to buy it once, the little store near Xavier, they have.
It's kiampang, not matchang.
It's kiampong.
Okay.
I know matcha.
All right.
Matchang's more popular.
Matchang's more popular because it keeps. Because it stores well. It stores well. Kiampang doesn't store well. it will spoil.
Okay. How about patatim?
So, pata is Tagalog. Tim is a Chinese word to mean like stew, like to babad in a stew, something like that. That's the closest that I could think of in terms of translation. Yeah, something like that. Yeah, babad in a stew to soften. And so you have a mixture. You have pata and then cook the tim way. And then you have pata tim.
But you have other tim dishes in China.
Yeah, because it's just a way of cooking. It's just so happened that the pata tim became popular here.
Yeah, but it's rather old. I mean, it's not yesterday, because even my grandparents know about, my lola knows about.
It's common.
It's common, no?
It's more of a Filipino version.
Majority of Chinese dishes kasi when you go to China, when you say meat, when you just say meat, it usually means pork. Because if you refer to, let's say, beef, you have to specify the prefix. Okay. So in Chinese, when you say meat, it's ma. Ma. And when you say ma, normally, if you talk to anyone, if you say ma, you mean pork. If you want to say beef, you have to put the qualifier in front. Guma, which is beef meat. When you say chicken, you have to say koi ma, chicken meat. No, so when you say meat, it's usually pork. And so chances are the patatim and all the humba, those are all popular in China, in southern China as well. Because those would be staple fare. Pork would be staple fare in China.
Okay. How about chop suey?
That's American. Chop suey is American. Yeah. Chop suey was invented in the US.
California or something, So, but it's the Chinese here have adopted it. It's in everybody's menu, more or less, no?
Yeah, the Filipinos, it's everybody's fare. It's karinderya fare. Diba? Every packed lunch has chop suey.
Okay, maybe final question. Final question is, what is festive food? I mean, if for the Filipino, it is lechon. Hilda Fernando told me that for the Batanggenyo during, early 30s, I mean, during the 30s or American period, the festive food was a young kid. It was kid, no? And then, of course, when during the Americanization period, we have turkey. In China, what is that?
Festive food will always be noodles. Because noodles symbolize long life. So any occasion, you have noodles. If you want the version, that would be in restaurants here. That would be the birthday noodles that they call in restaurants. That would be the most common festive food. Where every occasion would have it. But then, in China, every occasion also has its own specific food. Just like you only eat turkey during Thanksgiving. You eat tikoy in New Year, during New Year. It's rice cake. And you eat mooncake during the Mid-Autumn Festival. So you don't eat tikoy in other parts of the year. You don't eat mooncake outside the Moon Festival season. So every occasion will have its own specific food item, no? So for example, another example would be dumplings. Dumplings will be during the Dragon Boat season. I don't remember that day, but you have those. And then lumpia is 15 days after the New Year. Yeah. So you have those very specific occasion food, but you also have your noodles, which will be an all occasion food.
Ever present.
It's ever present. It has to be ever present because it symbolizes long life.
What I had another question for you. Of course, if you remember, I went to China with your mother. But before that or after that, there was another contingent that went. I think it was Ambeth, no, Ocampo, and he said that I think he went ahead of me or after me, and then he said that at one point, of course, we were hosted. You know, there was hosting and we were fed Chinese food, but he said they brought the rice later, and so they told I think the interpreter, we're Filipinos, we eat the rice with our ulam, can you bring the rice at the same time? Is that the practice, that you eat the rice, or is that what they say? They give you the rice and the soup at the end, because if you partake those, that means that the main viands did not satisfy you. Is that the
And
correct
the rice is
thing?
supposed to be a filler.
Yeah.
Yes,
At the end
it
of
is.
the meal.
Yes.
It
So
That
is,
means you are not happy with the rest of the food.
Yes.
So you're
It's
not
a
full.
waste, though.
but is it
It is.
is it a traditional practice or whatever it is called?
It's a thing, mainly because people are now more upwardly mobile and you want to put your best foot forward. And so you feed your guests with good food, with good ulam. Kasi it's not regular. So if you go to a home or you go to, let's say, a university cafeteria, it's still the way we eat, rice and ulam. But if you go to a laureate where you're being hosted by I don't know, by government officials or by a corporation, then they need to put their best foot forward and give you the best food possible. And you should get busog. Dapat mabusog ka dun sa pagkain. Tapos yung kanin, filler lang siya pag gutom ka pa. Ibig sabihin, hindi mo kinain yung mga available dun sa laureate. 'Di ba? Kaya gutom ka pa. Kasi pag kinain mo lahat ng laman ng laureate, yun yung best food, hindi ka nagutom at the end of the meal. Hindi ka nakakain ng kanin. And you still want to eat it, diba? Pero sila, but ano lang to, this is more social. It's more a social element. It's not a cultural thing. It's really a social element. That's only done if you're hosted formally by an institution or by government. Ganyan.
Okay, so another pahabol, and this time I think they should end it, no? Kasi we've been talking about food, we're hungry. Anyway, is there the notion of dessert in Chinese cuisine, or are the buchi and almond jelly in restaurants invento na naman ng Pinoy?
Meron naman, may dessert naman. It's mostly fruit. Mahirap kasi yung fruit kasi winter countries, 'di ba? So it's not very they do a lot of preserved fruit. They have a lot of preserved so desserts, if you're eating fruit, there's a lot of preserves kasi hindi laging available yung fresh fruit, 'di ba? In terms of dessert, hindi rin kasi matamis yung Chinese palate. Hindi
But some dishes are Swedish.
depends on where. But in general, they hindi matamis yung palate. It's not very sweetish. So dessert-wise, there are cakes and jellies, and those are common. Hopya,
A snack.
it's a snack. It's just tinapay, parang ganon. Parang the way we treat pandesal. So it's not a pastry, it's not a dessert, it's just a snack.
There's so many flavors in hopia.
That's Philippines.
That's
That's purely Philippine invention. Because hopya is just beans.
The mung beans.
Yeah, that's just mung beans. Red bean, mung bean, yun lang siya. Beans lang talaga ang hopya.
So, ang ube pandan and
Ay, dito yan. Invento natin yan. Kasi ube is Philippines.
Yeah.
Diba? Ube is very...
Pineapple and
And then there's a pork, di ba?
but the pork,
No, it's not pork. It's winter melon.
Yeah.
It's condol, di ba?
It's kundol. It has been kundol since the 1990s.
And why did they call it pork?
Because dati talaga baboy siya. Large siya. Oo, may konting baboy pieces siya. The originals. But I think starting the 1990s, it has always been kondol. Oo. That texture that you eat na parang feeling mo taba ng baboy,
Yes, yes.
kondol yun.
But it's still called baboy.
It's still called
Baboy.
Hindi na, I think pinalitan na si NBT yata pinalitan na to hopya kondol eh.
You cannot.
Hindi na yata niya, tinanggal na yata nila. I'm not sure. Haven't purchased hopya in a long while.
Right.
I just purchased the mango.
Well, on that sweet note, we would like to thank Mea and Marissa for joining us in this very nakakagutom na Usapin Usapan. I think we should have more of this. And the next time I would like to tackle also with you would be the geography of, in the Philippines, of Chinese food. I mean, the way the Cebuanos have also taken to Chinese food because maybe of the migration, because of traders. And why is Lomi considered Batangueño and not Chinese? For instance, in Lipa, Batangas, they own it. No, they have a Lomi festival. And I remember going to Timbak in Benguet, and it had a wonderful Chinese restaurant with the best pancit that I've ever tasted. So maybe in our next Usapin and Usapan, we can talk about the movements of the Chinese in relation to food, and also in relation to who brought in the gardening in Metro Manila, in the environs, because they say that in the Cordilleras it was brought in by the Japanese. So maybe we can tackle that, the contribution of the Chinese migrants to the botanical landscape.
Yeah, that would be
Okay.
good.
Okay, thank you very much.
One more question.
One
Lomi.
question.
When I thought that when we refer to lomi, it's the noodle. It's the fat noodle. Is it the manner of cooking or it's the fat noodle?
It's a manner of cooking. Lo is a manner of cooking. Lo is stewing it for a long time. And then every mi is just noodle. The word for noodle is mi. So mami, lomi, Miki, miswa. Mi is the noodle, the name for the noodle. Lo is so you can also have loma. Ma is meat, loma. So it means you're stewing something for a very long time.
No noodles anymore.
No, it doesn't have to have noodles. So it depends on what you lo, because the lo is the manner of cooking. Yes.
Okay, so there's so many questions about food, as you said, and as a food writer or someone who researches on food, I've always found out that food is a subject matter that puts people together. It does not divide, as maybe politics and religion do. Food is always something that we enjoy talking about and, of course, eating.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Cora, for having me.